Very good evening and welcome to Biz First Review 360. The political crisis that has grappled our country has of course affected the economy of the country gravely, and we've got Mr. Dhananath Fernando from Advocata Institute for a discussion on that subject. But before that, let's take a look at your top stories on business news this week.
The Monetary Board has decided to increase the standing deposit facility rate of the central bank by 75 basis points to 8% and the standing lending facility rate of the central bank by 50 basis points to 9%. The Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, made the following remarks.
And also, Governor, the abolishing of the fuel pricing formula, how do you think that it will affect the fiscal side?
My understanding is it hasn't been abolished. It is being done in a different way. But the principle of having some kind of mechanism or process to adjust fuel prices to reflect movements in international oil prices, that is still there. But it's not a regular, once every 2 months adjustment.
Governor, we heard that the FIU has signed a MOU with the Department of Motor Vehicles to investigate into money laundering. Now, recently we heard these politicians, talking about giving money to crossover and all this. The FIU going to investigate that, to see if that money is through money laundering.
Fortunately for me, the operations of the FIU are entirely independent. So I don't know and I don't need to know.
The graduation ceremony of the students who successfully completed the Diploma in Electronic Media at the Maharaja Institute of Management of the Capital Maharaja Organization.
Setting a standard in the industry, a benchmark is created today. The inaugural, the very first batch is ready to take stage, ready to go in to the society, graduating from the Maharaja Institute of Management.
"21 students from across the country received their certificates from distinguished personalities, including Foreign Minister Sara Thamunugama, Vice Chancellor of the University of Peradeniya, Upul B. Disanayaka. The gold prize for the best MIM student 2018 was awarded to Amit Eshan.
Gold award at the inaugural graduation ceremony of the Maharaja Institute of Management.
Addressing a gathering where many talented speakers are sitting at the audience is no easy task. In the past, if you are to be a journalist, you needed to have a gift of the gab. But now it is not the same. There needs to be practice. I am extremely pleased at the effort you have taken to establish this institute. It is very important to our country's future.
A large number of students sit for university entrance exams in this country. However, only a minute amount is selected. The rest of them are rejected not because they are not talented, but only because we can't facilitate such large numbers in state universities. There is no proper plan for those who are not able to make the cut. I remember a long time ago there was a plan to set up universities called subsidiary universities. Unfortunately, that concept was destroyed and those were named universities as well. That is how there are 15 universities in the country right now. When I was watching the TV, I saw a difference after the 26th. It cannot be that way. I personally informed Sirasa. We were only able to see a balanced news bulletin on Sirasa.
By this time last year, the curriculum was only a piece of paper in my hand. But this was powered by our chairman, Mr. R. Rajamahendran. When myself and Suranga Jayalath, who is the Group Director of Human Resources in our company, went to meet our chairman, he said such a project will benefit our society greatly. Therefore, I will give you my fullest support. That was our inception. This MIM diploma is the only diploma in the country which is conducted by a media institution where lectures are carried out by seasoned media personalities, and the only diploma which is accredited by the Tertiary Educational Commission. Even though our journey was slow, it was a stable one. Therefore, we are content.
If you have the imagination and if you're determined to achieve something, you can do it. And it's significant that you are graduating at Stein Studios because this is the benchmark of achievement. We built it at a time, a few months after Deparnama was obliterated in a bomb explosion. All because the chairman, Mr. Raj Mahendran, saw it in his mind and had the determination to execute it.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa announced at the Parliament that fuel prices will be reduced with effect.
We have a responsibility to reduce the prices that increases day by day. When the price in the world market decreased, the price of fuel increased here according to a formula. So today I will ask again from the minister to decrease the prices. We'll decrease the petrol prices today. We'll decrease it tonight as well.
The price of a litre of 92-octane petrol will be reduced to 140 rupees and a litre of 95-octane petrol will be reduced to rupees 164. A litre of auto diesel will be priced at rupees 111 and a litre of super diesel will be rupees 136.
The Prime Minister informed me to reduce the prices after consulting the ministry to provide a relief to the people. The price of fertilizer was reduced and several other tax reliefs were granted. We reduced the tax for bringing money into the country. Day by day, we have taken steps to reduce the cost of living, cost of the people and uplift the economy of the country.
We'll now cross over to a short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. Biz First Review 360 will return on the hour. Welcome back. You're watching Biz First Review 360. This evening, we're joined by Mr. Dhananath Fernando from the Advocata Institute. A very good evening, Dhananath, and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Shaleen. Thank you very much for having me.
Alright, so the question that is on everybody's mind is the current economic status in the country and how will this political crisis affect it? We've been covering this topic on a number of Biz First Review 360 programs that we've conducted throughout the past couple of weeks since this political crisis began. So we will start, Dhananath, from where we started before. What do you think? How much will this political crisis affect the current economy of the country?
Shaleen, for any economy, uncertainty, political uncertainty is the worst thing for an economy. So sadly, we are experiencing that currently at the moment. And this economic crisis didn't start like just 2 weeks ago. The 2 weeks ago, from actually 3 weeks, from the 26th of October, this is going to an unimaginable level. But this started very early. But this sort of a crisis we couldn't, of course, afford. So this uncertainty will have a massive repercussion on our economy. In my opinion, it will take about 5-10 years to recover from this, considering multiple factors. One is the image, the tarnish of the image on the country, because we have a 1.5 billion debt repayment to be done by April. We have a 1 billion to be done on January 15th and another 500 million to be done by about April. So we don't have money to pay this. So what we do is we roll the debt. So we again taking debt to pay this 1.5 billion debt. So when you are taking again debt, there will be an interest cost. So when you have an political uncertainty crisis situation and you have about 60 days before paying a 1 billion loan settlement, what would happen is definitely your interest rates will go up. And when you have interest rates go up, and this is not interest rates calculating on rupees, this is coming on dollars. And you know the situation of dollar, it was yesterday at about 178 rupees, a record low in the history of Sri Lanka.
And it keeps on depreciating.
Exactly. So that interest rates will be passed on, you and I, that would be the common people. So the market uncertainty is the worst thing that can have an economy, and we are currently experiencing it. And my opinion is, imagine, Shaleen, you and I, we have been discussing on how to build the economy
for so long.
Imagine if we have been discussing for a second, imagine how to destroy an economy for a second. I don't think even the best conspirators in the world could bring it down to this level after discussing so many things to destroy the economy. If we have been doing it, I don't think this will go up to this level, because our growth rate has been by the central bank. We had about 2.8% last year, and we have been predicting about 4% this year, and it has been cut down. Estimates has been brought down to about 3.6%. And if you look at the expectation of the people, I have been telling this for so long, we average from independence, we have about 4% in 4% economic growth. If we continue this trend, 4%, we will be a Malaysia's current status. Current status by about 2040.
2040?
Exactly. Singapore by 2080 at the current level. Even if we had a sustainable rate of 6%, we will be Singapore in 2060. And now we are running at 3.6% growth rate. And you can imagine how
long it will take if it continues to reduce.
And how it would affect your generation and my generation, the youth of this country, because they had bigger hopes of living in a prosperous country and having economic growth, economic freedom, and to do business, to earn well, and to have a better lifestyle. And if you go to the roads today, there is nothing happening. You have protest. Even if you have a branded vehicle, you can't drive it in the roads. So what's the point you having a vehicle? So it has gone up to that bad serious level. And if you look at, since we are in the country, we don't feel it. If you go overseas, and if you look at the way the overseas media reports the situation, it's terrible. And we ran a campaign on tourism called So Sri Lanka just 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and we have been going to London Stock Exchange and London to bringing the foreign direct investment to Sri Lanka. And you have this sort of a situation in Sri Lanka, what investor wants to come and invest in Sri Lanka. So this is extremely bad situation on the economic front. And ultimately, the important thing is that the cost of this political uncertainty, there's a cost, definite cost, and that will have to be borne by the people of this country.
So the politicians that represent us in Parliament, how much will they feel the impact of this? Will they feel it? Will they feel it in their everyday lives?
I doubt. I really doubt. The number one problem we have is, Charlene, the size of the government. We have a very big government. When I say big government, I am not only referring to the Parliament and the jumbo cabinet we had. When you have a jumbo cabinet, you are automatically expanding the size of the government, because each cabinet minister will have multiple institutes. These institutes have another subsidiary of another level of institutes. For an instance, we have about, when we did the first research, I have been talking this for some time, and Advocate as one of the key research priorities is state-owned enterprises. We have about 245 state-owned enterprises. And first, I challenged the Ministry of Finance, if possible, show the list of state-owned enterprises.
They don't even have a list?
Exactly. They don't even have a list. And if you go through the COPE reports, even most of these state-owned enterprises, they don't produce their annual reports. Number 2. Number 3, these state-owned enterprises, in our estimation, it's not 245. They have about 300 state-owned enterprises, but no one knows the number. And these state-owned enterprises, they have another subsidiaries and sub-subsidiaries. So that all cost to people. And that is why we have about 1.5 million state workers. And given the current situation, we don't know who the Prime Minister is, who the Minister is on respective ministerial portfolio. We have about 17% of our labour force working in the government sector. Given the situation for the last 3 weeks, no one is doing anything. And your entire state workers, that is about 1.5 million of your population, just going idle. And you are not doing any productive work. But who is paying for that? Someone has to pay for that.
The taxpayers.
Exactly. The Treasury Secretary, Dr. R.H. Samarthaka, the former Treasury Secretary, had said they needed 900 billion to cover the pensions and the state worker, state sector salaries. 900 billion is equivalent to how much do you think? 40,000 from each citizen.
40,000 rupees per
each citizen per annum. So for the last 3 weeks, I hope it will continue for about, I wish it won't, but if it continues for about a month, it means, 1/12, for 1 month throughout the year, you have been idling. So what's the, what's the point? What's the point? And you see the economic impact coming in, and our economy is already in a bad shape. And this will have an impact which is unimaginable, and I think the politicians and the leaders has to get their act together and think future. Not for them, they are already old, their generation is gone. But for their kids and for people like
well,
us.
Well, we've been calling for politicians to get their act together for quite some time now, and with the very timely example that you brought forward, the fact that if this continues for 2 more weeks or maybe 1 more week, it means that government employees, 17% of our country's workforce, have been idling for an entire month, and that is just unimaginable. We're discussing the current economic crisis in the country that has been fueled by or worsened by the political uncertainty that has grappled our country. Stay tuned, you're watching Biz First Review 360. Welcome back, you're watching Biz First Review 360. We're in conversation with Mr. Dhananath Fernando from Advocata Institute. Dhananath, getting back to our conversation, you said parliamentarians need to get their act together. Currently, I mean, the situation in our country is just sad, to say the least. I mean, people draw parallels of our country's parliament with parliaments in countries like Nigeria and other South African countries that just came out of a dictatorship or are in complete political unrest. And that is quite evident with what we saw throughout the past 2 days in Parliament, the events that unfolded in Parliament. How much do you think that this would have tarnished the image of our country in the international arena?
If you look at the statistics, you can get quite a sense of what happened for the last 2 weeks. From the government securities market, there has been $120 million withdrawn, and at the same time foreigners had sold net basis shares amounting to 8 billion rupees, and that's about another $45 million has been sold out. So 120 billion from the government securities means year before our total foreign direct investment was about 750 million US dollars.
Okay.
It reached about $1 billion US dollars last year with the Chinese, the port deal that we did with Hambantota.
Okay.
But that means even if you had 700 million US dollars, and 120 means almost about 1/5 or 20% has been taken off
within the course of 3 weeks.
Within the course of 3 weeks. So that shows the impact. Anyway, we had a net outflow. Of course, because of the global economic situation, there has been high interest rates in US, so people have been taking their money and putting it back investing in US. And on top of that, when you have this sort of a situation, you can imagine what is going to happen. Number one. Number two is we are also going for another circles and circles of elections. From next year, January 8th, President can call a presidential election at any time, and we are waiting for another decision on a general election. So that means we are at this the last stage of the November, and then it would be December, and from next year onwards there will be provincial council elections, there will be a general election or a presidential election. So that means
and a presidential election.
So this means we will be continuing this political, even people expect, today the parliament will convene and they will appoint a prime minister, or the appointed government will be able to carry out their duties. It will be, when you look at a broader sense, this unrest situation trending to be continuing, because when you have elections, like in Sri Lanka, like in the third world countries, ministers will cross over and there will be a lot of political drama will be happening, and people will be focusing on these things. And also we have we are a country where most of the common people supporting, being loyal to their parties, they'll come to streets, and
because no matter what their party does, they will support their party.
Exactly. So with that, I feel this is going to be continue. I mean, not as bad as this, but this political unrest will be continuing till about 2020. But unfortunately, that would be financially the toughest time for Sri Lanka. We have to fasten our seat belts because of the debt payments, and our economy is not growing as we expect. So on top of that, there are a lot of climate changes happening. So this year we had a probably better year than the last year.
We saw massive flooding, landslides.
Exactly, and those things are of course inevitable. We can damage we can cover the damage, but if there's we pray and we hope that nothing like that happen. But we of course have to keep a room for that sort of unpredicted, inevitable situation. So with that, we are in a highly risk situation, and at the same time, the credit agencies like the Fitch and the Moody's has already given their red flag given the uncertain
and
political
negative outlooks.
Exactly. So then there will be higher interest rates that we have to pay. So when you look at overall situation, it is quite shocking, and I think as an economic research institute we are quite saddened of the situation, and it is not looking good. And I think the central bank is also under massive pressure. They changed their statutory rates a few days ago, and I think because they have to raise money. And the other factor is we were supposed to have a budget
passed in November. So that has become no event with this parliament proroguing the parliament and the political drama that is happening at the moment. So then there was a discussion about vote on account. It seems that now seems that is also not going to happen. So that means for the next year we will not have a budget. So in the event that we do not have a budget for the next year, what would be the course of action? Yeah, so then we have to either we have to go for a vote on account, okay, and that's one option. It seems that if it is not happening, then we have to run through the consolidated fund. But the consolidated fund is also negative. It's like it's a copy of the government cash book, okay, and we all know we are on a budget deficit. We had about, I think, 246 billion deficit last year. So with, I think currently we are at about 145 billion, if I am not mistaken, overdrawn. So the president can then approve the payments, but then the budget discipline will not be there. It's not only paying people and earning the income. There has to be policy measures to boost exports, to create more economic prosperity, economic growth, and nothing is happening. But then one might argue that even in the financial budget for the year 2018 that was passed last year, of course, only close to about 8% to 10% of the budget proposals have been fulfilled. So at the end of the day, what's the point in passing a budget if you're going to only adhere to 10 to 8% of it? I completely agree with you. If they are not, if it's 8% being implemented from the budget that they have proposed last time, there is no point. But it is always better to have a budget, so at least we know the deviation. Okay. Since we had a budget, we know only there's 8% being implemented. Since we don't have a budget, we really don't know whether we implemented. And the lack of a budget might definitely crank up the level of corruption that we experience here in our country. Exactly. Not that we are short of that or anything. Exactly. So not having a budget is a crucial thing, and the policy measures will not be implemented when we don't have a budget. So that's the crisis situation that we are facing, and it is indeed sad, and we hope and pray that things will be better for the future of Sri Lanka. Indeed, we do hope and pray that things will be better for the future of Sri Lanka, and it is, of course, the general public that has the final say in all matters. Come an election, come a time when you can voice your opinion, please do step forth and voice your opinion for the betterment of our country, our future generation, and of the entire Sri Lanka as a whole. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much, Adanath, for joining us this evening. You've been watching BizFirst Review 360. We will be back next week. Thank you very much. Take care and God bless.